started on time. So I shall do exactly that. So again, hello everyone. We're just going to get started now. So hello and welcome to our lunchtime series of webinars here at the Ireland Chapter of PMI. My name is Katrina Collins and I'm the Events Director. Thank you for joining us today for our final webinar of 2020 and to return to some of the soft skills that we all need to hone as project professionals. So formally this time, hi Fiona and hi Lisa.
Hello Katrina, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. So today Lisa and Fiona from ThinkHackers are going to walk through a number of the dimensions of EQ from some topics such as tone and self-awareness. I don't want to give too much away, but I can tell you that you're in for a very interesting hour. I also want to highlight that Lisa is a project professional and an Ireland Chapter alumni. She maybe promised I wouldn't tell you that, but here we are. So it is safe for me to say that she has been through the same wars as all of us that are attending here today. So we can expect some engaging conversation and insight, plenty for us to take away from the conversation. Now, before I hand over, I do want to say a few words. As usual, you guys are well used to this by now. There are no slides today. So grab a cup and listen in. You got to pay attention. You got to listen in. But we do want you to take part. And for this, Lisa and Fiona have put together a number of questions. I think it's about 10 or 11 of them to bring you through the conversation with them. So you guys can interact, react, and you can give your thoughts. Fiona and Lisa will also talk to you about using the chat in here and raising your hand using the webinar tools as well. We do want your input and your feedback as we progress through the webinar. So I'm just going to open up the Mentipoll and share it just in a second. But first of all, let me hand over to Fiona and Lisa. Thank you for joining us today and take it away, as they say.
Thanks, Katrina. Thank you very much. So I'm Lisa and this is Fiona, my business partner and longtime friend. And we're delighted to be here. Big thank you to Katrina to getting us to this point, which is brilliant. And to Pat Lucy, who started the whole conversation as well. So big thank you. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about our EQ words and how we can best articulate them. That is the core of what Fiona and myself are about and the reason why we set up ThinkHackers, because we're building a community of support that can teach people and support people in making emotional connections through the power of their words. And let's face it, in 2020, who knew we were going to be in a COVID-ridden environment, in a pandemic?
Absolutely.
Intelligence and that kind of communication is more necessary than it ever was before.
And I know you and I had a little conversation, even Katrina, as we spoke last night. It is viewed as a soft skill, and yet if you consider the situations people have been put through, put in, are currently in, when I hear the word soft skill, we bristle. You know, it's hard. I kind of feel like it's personal.
I like to set you up for the topic.
Unfortunately, we're mirroring back your words, but
sorry, I'll just be the patsy
here. I
hear
you, but yeah. So I think if there was ever a time to truly consider your message and your voice, it's now.
It absolutely is. And you know, as Katrina mentioned, she outed me there. You know, I have to say I'm very happy to be back with my tribe with project managers. You know, I think we're an amazing bunch, right? I've been in the PMOs for years, and I think we're a highly undervalued group of people. I think people often consign project managers to the doldrums of administration and chasing Excel files and getting actions done and basically telling people what to do. But what they don't realize is that we practice a black art. We are psychologists. We are able to read rooms and read people. You know, we're able to take that nervous executive sponsor and talk them back from the ledge. We take the negative stakeholder and we bring them back into the fold. Lackadaisical suppliers and over-promising third-party vendors, particularly offshore development, you know, we are able to manage them, herd them back in, get them back on time. And on top of that, you're dealing with a lot of team members, very smart people, subject matter experts who all think they know more than you, right? And we can cop, like as we were talking last night, Katrina, you know, we can spot a con, right? We can totally and utterly
I get away with nothing in this business relationship or friendship, really.
The whole lot, yeah. You're all accountable and knowable, but we can spot it. And you know what? That's because really good project managers bring their EQ game to the table, A game to the table. They mightn't even know it, but they certainly do bring their game to the table. So I'm going to talk a bit about myself, first of all, just to give you a little context as to where I've come from. And Fiona, you're going to have a bit of a chat and introduce Fiona and her industry as well, which is not as dissimilar as you think. And then we'll get kicked into some of the meat and two veg of this, right? So I have an IT background, but I've worked in 5 different corporate functions across multiple different industries. So I would have worked in sales, manufacturing, warranty, IT, and supply chain across anything from medical devices where you and I,
Where we met.
up. Exactly.
If I knew then what I know now.
You'd be delighted. And I'm a project manager by nature, right? It's not by choice, not by design. I am incredibly organized. I do like to know what's going to happen. I plan fun, as my husband likes to tell me. And yes, I'm like that by nature. But what I found when I got into project management is that I'm also a masochist, or I must be a masochist, you know, because when everything's going great and everything's going well, you know, the team are doing really well. But when it's all falling apart and it's all going wrong, well, the project manager is at fault. And that to me is a very, very lonely station, very, very lonely station. So just a little bit, I've made notes because I'm very, very forgetful, highly forgetful.
And let's not forget organized, Lisa. So, you know, quite linear.
Quite linear. I have it sequentially laid out here. So from an emotionally intelligent, my journey from an emotionally intelligent perspective is that I actually do not make good emotional connections with people. It is not natural for me because I'm an introvert. I'm really shy, right? I know it may not seem like this, but it took 23 years to get me to here, 45 actually.
And many learnings.
Many, many, many learnings. So I had to figure out how to make a connection with people because I couldn't naturally do it. I had to figure out how to do it and do it by listening. And I do it by putting myself in other people's shoes and understanding their context and where they're coming from and then empathizing back with them. So that's how I learned. I found that I started getting results when I did that. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, I was really bad at speaking. Nobody could hear me inside meetings, right? Nobody would hear me making my point. And I get a stammer when I'm really nervous. So I have to be able to control that, or I get breathy, very breathy, get up on a high pitch. So I've had to learn to control that. And I have employed little tools and hacks that allow me to ensure that if I want my point made, then I'll drop my voice to a whisper. And then people will lean in. So you learn all these tricks and tools. And I found that if I start reading a room and putting myself in other people's perspective and projecting my voice in a different timbre, that I was getting results and that people were listening and I was getting forward. So this is a lesson that I learned. There's lots of lessons that I learned. Mm-hmm. I learned these lessons very much the hard way. I have no mentor. I can only think of one training that I ever did that was impactful for what I do. And I've had no support, you know, bar having a friend at work that I can speak with and that can support me, a peer colleague, which I think is absolutely critical for everything. I've had nothing. So 23 years of hard lessons learned. And what Fiona and myself found is that when we talked about these lessons, the reactions we got from people was astounding. Even if we just reflected what they were going through themselves, or that they had been in that situation and didn't handle it the way that they thought they did, that is what ThinkHackers is born from, the lessons learned.
Exactly. So I'm one half of the ThinkHackers club community. I'd say the better half. Lisa would say the chaotic one.
Oh my God.
And I would say quite visionary, actually, in the ThinkHackers community. Look, I'm a mom. I have 2 boys. They're 6 and 4, quite boisterous. So if ever there was the most challenging time I have found, not only because we set up this ThinkHackers community, working from home with toddlers, I can tell you it has tried me in more ways than I care to admit to. But I got to know Lisa. She had the fortune of meeting me, by the way, a number of years ago.
It's my fortune.
It's about 13 years since we met. We met in a medical company. And you know, what we do and what we did then was thrive off each other's energy. And I think if you can remove fear out of situations, actively listen. We will mention this more than once today. Do you listen to understand, or do you listen just so you can speak? And these are the kind of critical emotional tools that we are going, or think hacks that we are going to talk you through. So look, I grew up in a family business. I am the polar opposite to Lisa in so many ways. It's amazing we're friends, really.
It's amazing, actually. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm an extrovert. I'm what's called an extrovert's extrovert. I absolutely thrive off meeting people. I need their energy. I need that to flourish. So it's really interesting how Lisa and I have come together. She's the sciencey one, and I'm a little bit more emotional.
Well, I'm glad you didn't call me geek. That's how I normally get introduced.
So I set up my business 12 years ago. I moved into TV. I'm a regular contributor and a broadcaster now on RTE. A little bit of a story we'll tell you later. I set up my business on educating people on style. And what I've learned, when we speak about the learning we have gotten through emotional intelligence, I'm successful as a stylist, not because I know clothes and fashion. I adore them, by the way, and I always will. My success lies in my ability to communicate, to get to the core. And that is really inherent for me as I have to make people feel good. It's something that I have from childhood. I adore meeting people, and that's the energy I thrive off. And that's the kind of energy we want to help people bring into a room. So that's kind of the introduction of me. Fashion just happens to be one of the mediums that I would use to communicate with people. And that's our kind of intro. So I suppose we'll kick it off, will we?
Yeah, let's get it.
And you ladies can see the Menti poll as well. You can
Yeah,
see all that on the screen. Super.
Clarity. Yeah. So what's the Achilles heel? And we are going to kind of dip in and out. So we'll apologize to Katrina now. She's doing such
I'm just going to move over and back and just control over them today. Yes.
Confrontation, conflict, keeping the message simple. These are all music to our ears.
Yeah, exactly. We've learned all of these, and getting it fast enough as well, trying to keep it succinct and in 3 short points. Executives like to hear only in 3 short points.
And that's funny because Lisa and I, the relationship that we have, and when you speak about introvert and extrovert, which is really important to kind of break down the teams and what their personalities are like. When Lisa and I are doing some brainstorming, because I'm I say visionary as a joke, but I am quite visual. So if I'm thinking of a project or an event, for me, I put myself in that room, in that space, and I tend to move really quickly to that point. So Lisa has often had to rein me back in. And when she does that, I get a little bit like, what's wrong with you? I'm just, and it's my reaction to that. And what's really important in communication, it's not about what's being said. It's about what the person you are speaking to will hear.
That's the most important thing. And then to flip that over as well, being an introvert as well. My communication style normally is not to communicate, it's to listen. It's to listen and assess and come back with a different thought as well. And that has to be taken into consideration. None of them are right. There's loads of communication styles. We don't like actually to put labels on it, but there's lots of different communication styles. There's 5 if you look at marketing, there's 4 if you look at psychology, or vice versa actually. And we don't like to put the labels on it. So, have a think about how it is you communicate. And particularly, we've seen a couple of comments there about conflict and confrontation. How do you communicate in that area? What's your style there? And what would it be that you would like to change as well? And we'll talk about that a bit later.
Because we move into self-awareness, which really is a critical component. So so you're kicking off with EQ, tone, and words.
Yeah, we'll give a little bit of background on what emotional intelligence is. So this term was first coined in 1990 by a couple of researchers, John Mayer and Peter Salovey. But it was actually popularized by Daniel Goleman. He's a neurojournalist who wrote a book in '95 on it. And what Daniel did is he put a little bit of structure around this dark art, same as project managers have a black art, the dark art, right?
Soft, mind you. We'll talk about soft in a minute.
She's not going to let that go. She's not going to let that go. So what he's done is he's put a little bit of structure around it and made it a sort of pseudoscience or process science. And he's identified 5 different critical traits that you need to employ if you're emotionally intelligent. Now, we're not going to go through all that. You can read the book if you wish, or come to us directly. But I would like to talk about a couple of them, because we're here now in this pandemic, and I can't say it enough, right? The future state of work is here. We've changed, and we are now looking at remote working. And it's not simply enough to employ your emotional intelligence, but you have to employ it to good end. You have to be kind. Kindness is the result of using your emotional intelligence. understanding people and their perspective. And this will bring you to a point where you will have long established trust relationships in both your business and in your personal life. So, you know, just looking at the notes here. Yeah. So Goleman identified the different traits, but there's what he didn't bring it to a scientific format. It is only in 2005 Giacomo Rizzolatti identified that there is a part of the brain that has mirror neurons, and these mirror emotions. So, you know, whenever you somebody stubs their toe and you flinch, you can feel that pain. Well, it's the same with emotions. You know, if my friend lost somebody close to them, they would, you know, you would feel that sadness. And it's the same when you're in a team. If somebody's in a bad mood, then that brings the level of mood down, and people will react to that emotion. That's called mirroring. And it's because these mirror neurons are feeding into our emotions. So what they did is they did a study where they had two people standing in front of each other face to face. They asked them not to communicate, not to make eye contact, no body language, nothing, just simply stand there and do nothing. And what they found, and they had them hooked up to loads of pretty machines, and what they found is that the brain lit up, right? A certain part of the brain started lighting up.
And they were still, and there was no movement, there was no conversation.
Nicked, nothing. So, and they noticed that there was there was communication happening, even though nothing was being said. And this is emotional intelligence. We now call that the social brain. So what that tells you as well is when you mirror your emotions, that means that emotions are contagious. So, you know, when you yawn in a room, about 6 people beside you are also
I never yawn in your company, Lisa, ever, not once.
Well, why would you? But if you yawn in a room, a lot of people will also feel that urge to yawn. Well, it's the same with emotions. You know, if you, as a manager, use a sharp tone, then, you know, people are going to use a sharp tone. They're going to be affronted back, and that's going to change the mood. If you crack a joke, Fiona's going to talk about humor towards the end, and, you know, you lighten the mood, then that gets people into a more positive space, and they feel far more open to collaboration. And that's what you want from your team dynamic.
You're seeing, and it's interesting to see such a mix.
Yeah, it is. And
it is about perception as well. And even just being aware of your tone, isn't that critical?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even know it. I have a sharp tone all the time. I'm used to getting job done and not about being soft and gentle. I'm direct. I want to move things along, and I cut to the chase all the time. So,
and if people really considered the audience, which I'm sure all you guys and gals do out there, even just by understanding who's in the room and how your tone might be perceived, and I will say it probably time and time again, it's not about what you're saying, it's about how the person you're saying to
that's
it. Perceive it.
You see, that's a brilliant point, right? Because it's like that quote we said, you know, it's not what you said, it's people will
how you said it.
Yeah, and
it's how they make you feel.
We always come back to that quote. It's how you left feeling. I mean, it's actually proven that people will trust your body language and the tone of your voice more than they will trust your words. And that is a huge thing to remember, you know, because people are actually communication. They used to say it was only 35%, that verbal communication was only 35% of communication. That's actually lessening as we understand emotional intelligence more. All right. So
I think as well, like the answer, like in terms of do you think you have a sharp tone, I think sometimes is a fair answer from a lot of project managers, because actually sometimes we have to switch a gear and things aren't going the way we expect them to go. We have to deliberately change the tone.
And again, it comes back to you have to be able to remove your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. And it's incredibly difficult, and it probably brings us on to the, you know, the isolation as well.
Well, yeah, in one.
Yeah.
You know, we had a webinar a few weeks ago now on negotiation. David O'Brien, who's a PMP as well, one of his early points. So negotiation, a lot of technical points to learn. It's one of those ones where there was a lot of slides and a lot of things that you can take away as a reference material. But one of the first things that he said was, and he gave a personal example, and he said, this is just an example of working the problem and not the person. And, you know, he spoke about, he really let this person get into his head, and he was more focused on how to deal with this person than he was, well, hold on a second, we've got a problem here that we need to deal with. It's the problem that's the problem, not this person's, you know, how they're reacting to me. So I thought it was just like, it really kind of hits the nerve here with the EQ and, you know, work the problem.
That's interesting,
Yeah.
because
Take
we
the
actually
emotion out
are
of
going
it.
to talk a little bit about that as well,
Yeah.
because, you know, it's so easy not to take yourself out of the picture as well. And but yeah, no, that's brilliant. I'm just going to give a few tricks before we head into
Yeah,
isolation. I'm
perfect,
just
do
going to
it.
give a few tools or think hacks that you can employ when you are
And it's really
engaging
important.
your emotional intelligence. So again, we mentioned about tone and how people do trust their own tone. So, and you know, I love the way that people are saying sometimes there as well. So it's very easy to soften your tone and to decrease your inflections. Now, everything that we talk about is not simply flick the switch and you're going to be able to do it. It is all about learning and practice, right? And it takes a lot of time. But you can look up Julian Treasure, right? He's got loads of these little soundbite TED Talks, and he is an expert on timbre, and they're really quick, and they help you to understand how to control your tone, right? And if you soften your tone, you're going to get your message across in a far more emotionally sensitive way. Use open-ended questions. So the Health Service for the last 15 years and charity organizations such as the Samaritans and Childline, they will only use open-ended questions. A very self-aware person will never use the word why, they'll only use what. And we should do the same. What it does is it allows people to have the space to expand on their message and their meaning. Mm-hmm. If we use why, it tends to be considered confrontational by our own minds. Mm-hmm. And if we use yes and no, then we're limiting the amount of interaction and context that we're going to get back from somebody. While it may take more time by asking people, how are you feeling? Can you tell me a little more? It does help to build a longer term trust relationship. And again, Katrina, back to your point as well, it's situational. I mean, sometimes we just, as project managers, you got to get it done and let's go, right? Another thing is to listen. Fiona mentioned it before as well. Active listening versus critical listening. Critical listening is something that I do an awful lot, right? And that's just waiting for people to finish talking so I can make my point, right? I'm listening to their message, but I'm not taking the context of where they're coming from into consideration. You have to step back from active listening and really hear what they're saying and try to understand why it is they're saying what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Put yourself in their shoes, understand where they're coming from, and try and listen from that perspective. I make notes. I write everything down from somebody. That helps me to keep my focus on. Mm. Another quick tool would be another think hack would be to reflect on people. So the FBI use this a lot when they're interviewing suspected terrorists.
Imagine working with this person.
Yeah. Every project manager should take notes then. That's definitely a tactic that we have to deploy every now and then.
Absolutely. It's so true. You know,
it's all coming out now.
Instead of shining a light on them and starting to roar at them, which you'd like to do, or what you see in movies or whatever, actually FBI agents can create a very safe space. Interrogators create a very safe space for suspected terrorists so they can feel emotionally stable and comfortable to talk more. And what they do is that they lower the tone and they reflect back the last 3 words of somebody's conversation and just change the tone slightly so it's like, really, did that happen? You know, so to make it feel like they're really feeling their pain or whatever, you know. So
you're basically saying that we should stop the torture in the meetings and bring back the cookies and the biscuits and start to be
the cookies and the biscuits.
Good tip for all the people that frustrate us when we can't get our job done. Just we should try being nice to them now and then.
True.
It's Christmas. It's the season of goodwill. We're going to give it a go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
we have everyone emotionally charged now and ready to take on the world.
Yeah, emotionally charged. Well, you know, we can deploy these. I mean, you don't have to be going around talking to people emotionally all the time. You know, that's not going to get you to your end game as well. But if you want to build trust relationships, this is really the way. And I do feel as well, because I've been that person who's been angry. I mean, I've been in meetings where I've shouted at people. I actually shouted at a room full of Italian telecommunications clients doing a facilitation back in the day, and I just roared at them, "Would you shut up?" I just got so sick of them on their phones and everything. It told different culture and everything as well, which we have to be mindful of. So, you know, yeah, look, I'm a work in practice, shall we say. Avoid control words, right? It's another thing, like using words like should, must, and need. That gets people's backs up. As soon as they hear that, they think they're losing their autonomy and they think, who the hell does she think she is, right? And I do that. I mean, we actually had a situation like that a few weeks ago. Yeah, I don't take direction well, apparently. No but statements either.
Yeah, but you know what, Lisa, like we were kind of friends first, so it's a tricky one to balance,
Yeah.
and especially if you're in an environment where you are friends with your colleagues, you know, and it's not that there's ever a power play, but we are two completely different people. So conflict happens when your needs aren't being met and your needs are different to mine, you know, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, but like that has been, we actually are an example of how to learn to communicate better. The fact that we're collaborating in a company, because we're two boss women, you know, we're used to telling people what to do and driving by our own tune, and now we have to consider the other person. So there has to be a lot more
Active listening.
Active listening for sure. And then just to finally finish it off on the words as well, we encourage people to be kind, not to be nice. So nice is a word that's derived from the Old French, where you have where it means senseless, tomfoolery, and stupid, right? That's what nice means. We encourage people to be kind, right? So kind comes from family, innate, natural. That's the etymology of there, and care. And you can deploy your emotional intelligence tools and listen and reflect and, you know, pay attention to people, and then go, well, you know, that doesn't mean that you really did do well in that particular area. And that's, I think,
cutting the legs out from under them is probably
100%. And then the last word that I'll leave you with, I know that we're conscious of time and everything, but the last word that I'll leave you with is don't use the word don't. Right? So if I say to you, don't think about Christmas.
Jingle bells, jingle.
Mince pies and fairy lights are floating around your head or whatever.
Yeah, it's true.
Because the mind doesn't process sentences in bits. When it hears don't, it's going, what am I not to do? What am I not to do? And by the time you get to Christmas, you're doing it. The mind actually processes things in full sentences. So don't use the word don't. And, you know, just
Kind,
we're looking,
respectful.
Yeah, respectful, reciprocal communication. That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, so speaking of kindness, and I think it's a really important topic, not just for EPMs, but as a whole. And I think isolation has come up here, and I see the word sometimes, and we see no, which is great, and I love hearing it. And overwhelmingly, the stats are telling us the isolation that is evident. You know, being a PM, and I know Lisa is in back with her tribe. It's quite similar. I mean, I'm self-employed. You know, I ran my own business for the last 15 years. And, you know, speaking of projects, have you ever begun a project mapping and it's just gone wrong? It's like the universe, right? It's like the universe has just said, this is not meant to happen. And I had this week. So I contribute regularly to RTE, and what I do is I put fashion pieces together. So my longest project when I'm doing RTE is 6 days. That is the length of time I get to turn it around, because a lot of the brands that I would work with on television are high street fashion retailers, which means their product gets turned around really quickly. So if I'm to take on a brand for RTE, I got 6 days and that's it. What will you guys see? 6 minutes. When I say a series of unfortunate events, I mean, everything went wrong.
I don't think we can even laugh at it now. Like,
well, I actually sat down because I do think it's really important to decompress. And thankfully, Lisa was there, right? Everything. The mic stopped working, wardrobe malfunctions, steamer stuck to close. And this is all quite small stuff. But when you were there, and I would assume quite similar as a PM, like the book fell with me. And I prepared to within an inch, and Lisa will tell you this, I prepared within an inch of his life. And then for it all to go, look, bomb. Bomb, bomb. It was like a domino effect. And as I said, everything just imploded, you know. And what was interesting, and what we've been reading such a huge amount, The Guardian wrote an article about a young girl, right? Erica, what's her name? Erica McKenzie, if you get a chance to check it out. She's only 23 years of age, okay? She decided, she knew what remote working was ever before kind of pandemics. And a lot of you guys would be the same. So after 4 months, she took this job. She thought it would be a brilliant thing to do. She lived kind of out of the city and she thought, I don't have to commute. I don't have to worry about it. I'm just going to take on this role remotely. After 4 months, she lost so much weight. She developed a heart condition. And then she started having panic attacks. Her family were really worried about her. And she was attributing it all to the job. And this is the thing we fall into. The work has to get done, the job has to get done, everything has to get done. But we have got to slow down. And what that was complete and utter isolation. I felt that this week. I don't think I have ever felt so alone, and lucky Lisa was there on the side, and peer support is incredibly, incredibly important. And let's look at the stats, right? Thrive Global survey that was done in April, just April this year, 80% of participants felt helpless and not in control. Okay, 85% felt that they needed more guidance on remote working, because not only, and a lot of you would be remote working, not only have you to deal with that, if like me, you might have had to deal with toddlers in and around your space, tight deadlines. Like, are people going to worry about all these things that are in the background? No, because you're a project manager. You have to take it all on. So what I would say is, think of those new employees. We do a lot of one-to-one coaching. We do a lot of, we've had a couple of people who are new into a position and started remotely. One girl in particular, knowledge rich, senior, absolutely no issue with doing a job. She's still new. Where are those people that you can lean to? Where's John? Where's Mike? Would you take a look at this? Would you have a look at this? I'm just after doing it. Who does she go to for processes? Who does she go for guidance? Who's HR? She kind of mentioned she managed to make it into the office one of the days, barely recognized her boss because there was a mask on. And she said, there was an element of kind of feeling like a stray dog. Like, work is hard enough. Working remotely is incredibly hard. Working remotely in a new job. So these are all the considerations. And has it worsened because of the pandemic? 100%.
You got 100% there. I do think as well, a lot of us as project professionals, we're used to working remotely. I've personally done it. I've traveled, I've worked remotely. I've worked with teams that have been 100% remote. Yeah. So when we entered into this in March, I was very much, be grand, I know exactly what I'm doing. I pretty much had my, networking, all the stuff, remote access set up, it was fine. A lot of other departments in the company never done it before. And that was actually where the problem came in for me. It was, yeah, I'm all very fine and well. I can work remotely, but the people that I need to get the job done end to end, some of them didn't even have laptops because, they were desktop based. So but even when you got out of those technology things, it was the emotional side of it. It was actually, these guys, they don't understand. It's different. You have to take care of yourself in a different way. You have to make sure you get your breaks. You're not having the water cooler chats. There's so many things that we take for granted.
Speak about like new hires. How do you work different things, like simple, really simple stuff that we are forgetting? And Lisa would often say how disillusioned, like, about kindness, and these are all the things. It's just and I'll take it in a second. But the other kind of stat that really kind of frightened me as such, like the highest at-risk group, right, are your kind of 16 to 35-year-olds. And, we're not all that age, or, but we know someone we are. But 16% of those pre-pandemic, right, they were saying that they feel isolation. So before any of those environmental factors of pandemic took part, 16%. And as a result of the pandemic, the numbers are nearly 50%. That's every second person.
Yeah, that's young people.
Work with these people. We are these people. Yeah. And we don't take that time to kind of consider it.
We have a comment here, Lisa and Fiona, from Jackie, and actually just to let everyone know, you can actually pop a comment in the chat. But I happen to know that Jackie has recently started a new role in mid pandemic, and she said onboarding remotely in a new job is really tough as you haven't got any network in the company, and it's difficult to build a rapport in 2 dimensions. So and I know she's not the only person that's with us today attending that has had to do this.
And
14-year-old here even.
And the thing is as well, when we were in that position and people are there, like this particular client that Fiona was talking about as well, it took 8 weeks before somebody actually reached out and asked, how is she doing, or how is she doing? And she couldn't believe, she actually thought she was doing something wrong and they were going to fire her. That's how adult her mind had turned. Right. So it's actually incumbent on employers to get in immediately, and don't start a conversation about, you can get the data here and the process here. Start off with reaching out. How can you help? Exactly.
And the other thing is, it is your job as a PM, it's your job as a lead to understand the preferred style of communication. Is it a case of picking up the phone? Ideally, yes, because we have lost the art of conversation a small bit. but some people want a text. That will do. A WhatsApp group with the new hires, with every, you know, those kind of challenges. And if you can just send out a text to get the ball rolling, to say, look, I'd like to schedule a call in with you. I want to see how you're doing. I don't care about processes. I want to make sure you're okay, you know. And this is where Lisa and I always kind of interject, and it is really important, obviously, but we're going to assume that everyone that's here can do their job. So it's the other factors that you've no control of, you know. And just to give like a couple of tools, right? You need to focus on the other person, and we speak about open-ended questions, you know. How can we support you? And we don't mean processes. We mean, what do you need? Do you just need a 20-minute guidance, whatever that is, you know? PMs are used to working in isolation. Like you know, you even had your own report with your blind spots. Like you feel like you have to do it all. And at least, you know, all that's going to do is going to reduce buy-in from your teams as well, because you are just adding to that isolation. And you talk about introvert and extrovert. I mean, this is probably an introvert's paradise, right? It is, you know, an isolation, as in you can't really go anywhere. Oh, this is great. This is reverting back to I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
Whereas I really struggled with the first one, because I didn't have any. I had no interaction. Like, I love my family, obviously. I'm a family person, but enough was enough. Like, I got to the stage where if I don't get out of here, like, I felt like a rat in a cage. So these are all the things that will attribute to the responses you're getting. Plus, everything can get misconstrued with emails and texts. So just to bring it back, have that active listening conversation. And the big thing, guys, is don't be an island. You know, as I said, the decisions need to be made, but teams need to reach out to PMs. PMs need to reach out to teams, you know, and make it about not you, make it about the other person.
You know, and with PMs and everything as well, there is a lot on us, you know, like you hear us talking about alleviating your isolation and PMs as well. I find it, like I said it earlier, it's a very, very lonely job. So, you know, it's incumbent on all of us to come together, you know, and create a forum that's not just simply about getting the project done or whatever. It's that camaraderie that keeps the team going as well. That's incumbent on all of us to create that kind of situation as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about self-awareness. And I'll try, I know that we're tracking over time. Fiona just gave me the nod there, but
I did that little kind of, do you know, I have to say, I do love webinars for that. There could be a little kick under the table, or, you know, no one is seeing anything. So it's fantastic, really.
Yeah, you. Yeah, exactly. This is our first webinar, by the way. I want to talk a little bit about self-awareness. It's another one of those critical traits that Daniel Goleman popped out. And for me, I think that this is the key. It really is the core of everything that we're trying to do from an emotional intelligence point of view. And I'm loving the comments here. I'm pushing buttons as well, because they're all the ones that annoy me.
So many, there's so many. Yeah,
they're brilliant. So with self-awareness, right, this is about describing your ability to recognize your own emotions, right? But that's not all self-awareness is. It is also about being able to objectively assess why you reacted in a particular situation, taking your own emotion out of it and looking at the situation as well objectively, and then having the foresight and the ability to understand that your reaction is not what you want to deal with. It's how the other person is hearing your message. Your emotions are valid, they are good, but at times they're also detractors and negative emotions, particularly as people have been asking about dealing with confrontation and conflict as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through, actually do a working example with you, one that I've lived and breathed myself. But before I do that, I want people to understand just how important self-awareness is and emotional intelligence is. 90% of top performers show that they have high self-awareness and high emotional intelligence. 90%. That's a big statistic. On a 40-year study that Berkeley did over a 40-year period, watching their students after they graduated and how they became successful, for the ones that had the emotionally intelligent trait were 400 times more successful in life. Now, I don't mean about earning loads of big bucks and having a big house. Successful and content in life. than people who scored low on having emotional intelligence. So this is something that affects you and your presence and your sense of mind, not simply your communication. It is a much bigger picture than the one that Fiona and myself are twisting for you here. So to go through an example of it, in my past life, I was transitioning a transformation program over to my replacement, Agile. Katrina, you love this.
No comment.
More Agile. I was transitioning it over, and I was having a week-long workshop and facilitation workshop full of VPs and directors. And in the middle of it, I made a statement that Agile doesn't perform to dates. Okay, now we're not going to debate that issue here, right? I know there's lots of opinions on it. That's not the point. And one person in the room said, Lisa, that's not true. So, okay, I said, fair enough. And I set about proving my point from a purist point of view, right? About a minute and a half into the discussion, this person, it's a he, turned around and said, I get so bored of listening to Lisa after 10 minutes. So you can you imagine how I felt? Can you imagine how you would feel if somebody said that? I get so bored of listening to Lisa after 10 minutes. So how would you react in that situation? Well, the way I reacted was I thought I was being magnanimous, and I said nothing. I didn't address the bad behavior. I continued to prove my point, and on the workshop went. But for weeks and months, and poor Fiona's had to listen to this, for weeks and months, my instinct and my gut told me that I hadn't dealt with this in the right way, that this was not right. I should have addressed the behavior. So what do you do in that situation? So I had to become very self-aware, right? It took me a long time to figure it out, but when I did, the first thing I did is I wrote down how I felt, right? And in that moment, when somebody condescends to you to say that they're bored of listening to you after 10 minutes in front of a room, I felt mortified. I was stunned into silence. I was hurt that somebody could be that derogatory about me. I felt self-pity. You know, I felt very sorry for myself and went into victim mode. I felt out of control and I was furious. So I wrote all those emotions down and I acknowledged them, and then I took them out of the discussion. So what did I say that was so bad? Did I say anything bad? No, my argument was correct and my argument stood. I didn't say anything too boring. Everybody else seemed to be pretty engaged, and we had a very good culture within that workshop for the week. So this was the outlier. This wasn't the norm for the workshop. So what I said and what I did was right. So that wasn't the issue. Then I had to do the thing that was most distasteful for me, was I had to put myself in this other person's shoes, right? And this person's a repeat offender. This isn't the first time that it happened, right? So I knew there was a gotcha coming at some stage, right? And I still reacted the way I did. But I had to put myself in their shoes. And I found that he was just being challenged. He had set up Agile in a particular way, was doing it in just a small area, but not in the entirety of the project. He had set up his organization to expand the hierarchy rather than reduce it down with Agile transformation. So, and he felt that he was being affronted. His view of the world was being challenged, and he felt condescended to by my statement, and therefore he condescended back to me. What should I have done? Well, I should have breathed, first of all, and let the air pause. And what the breathing is a neuroscientific fact. It kicks in your cognitive brain, overrides your fight or flight, so that you don't just simply get out of the hole, that you get the results you want. You put in your thinking brain, and I should have put him on point. Say their name. You put them on point so that the behavior comes back to them. You take your eye out of it, you take your own opinions out of it, and you put it back. So I should have stopped, breathed, and said, Santa Claus. Santa Claus, that behavior is not respectful of our culture within this workshop. I understand that you find my statement, the fact that we don't drive to dates, as a challenge. Let's work through that to see if we can get resolution. And that's what I should have said.
But you know what? It's powerful. it's powerful giving. We're looking at all the comments about dealing with challenging communicators here. You know, if it is the most liberating, it must have been the most liberating
when I realized
thing
it,
for you,
yeah.
as incredibly difficult. I think you've a lot to thank this person for, by the way. I'd be shaking their hand.
Hopefully we make money out of it.
Because of the epiphany. But if you can remove your emotion out of it, how, and that's not saying you have to be emotionless,
No.
but it's then that you can look at something really objectively and you can get to the other side. You have to put yourself in that other person's shoes, as difficult as it was. And it just sounds really mean, actually.
Yeah, well, look, no comment on that individual. Santa Claus was a bad Santa that year. Right? But look, just to finish up on it, you know, have the courage of your convictions. Always believe in yourself. So you're the subject matter experts, right? Don't let anybody ever talk down to you, right? And just be so self-aware to articulate it that way. You know, I'm scared here in front of you today. You know, I'm very scared because I'm presenting myself in front of my old work for colleagues and everything in a very new fashion. That's scary for me, but I'm not too scared because I'm
over. It's a bit late.
Oh, it came, did it? Yeah, you see, if we project managed that, they'd have been on time.
They're actually late. It's disgraceful.
Outrageous.
But yeah, so, you know, like, don't be too scared. If you're too scared, then you won't do things. If you're very scared, you'll still go and do them. Have the courage of your convictions. So Fiona, I'll hand it over to you.
After that lovely light subject, look, incredibly, I just think a gift was given to you. But look, we're going to lighten it up because we're going to finish up really soon. I can't believe the time is absolutely flying.
I know, it's after flying.
How would you describe your self-awareness? So just to have a little bit of humour, you know, and I spoke earlier about, this is our first webinar, and what I loved about it was I got up this morning and I put on my trousers and the zip went, and I thought, hey, no one's going to see. So that, by the way, is a bit of self-deprecating humour that we could all do a little bit of. And what we want to talk about is humour in forms of communication, right? So Andrea Nikolewski, if you want to look her up, she writes about likability. It's really simple. And I don't think we should live our lives on trying to be liked. But it's
I will say this to you, that at the end, I will ask you for some of the names and the books that you guys have talked about in the last hour, because you will definitely ask me for them.
That's no problem. We can send them as well if you want to post it up or whatever. Yeah. So Andrea Nicholas,
my apologies for interrupting.
Not at all, you're grand. She just writes about she writes about pitch actually, and voice and tone, which is really important. But if you think about it, if someone makes you laugh, it's like an instant interaction. It's an instant communication, and it's a very simplistic thing, but really important, right? Garner is another really good writer, writes about, he calls it ham it up. So humor is used a lot in education, and within that, if you think about it, if you're trying to give someone an instruction and you put a bit of humor in it, it's going to automatically make the learning process easier. And that's what I think as well. You know, you talk about persuasion. This is a big one for me, right? Mike Kerr, he says, you know, humor can be highly persuasive with presenting a message that people disagree with. So think about that. I'd imagine quite a lot, and it certainly happens in my environment. I speak about, you know, there's a bit of contention there. I'm delivering something that I know, and I'm sure you guys are the same, people are going to challenge you on all the time. If you hit it up with a little bit of humor, it does two things. One, it'll just diffuse any bit of aggression in the room. Also, they will feel like you're not ramming a theory down someone's throat. And when it's given to them in that kind of a manner, it's much easier to digest it. And the other thing about humor, retention, guys, you know, and I spoke earlier about learning. This is another really good writer, and it's about the explanation of the relationship between an instructor. So you can be that person that's delivering these webinars or these Zoom meetings, and how are you going to get people on board? A little bit of humor. Again, it just enhances the process and it results in a greater retention and learning. And the big thing here is, guys, humor reveals a little bit of yourself. You know, you're there in a room, and I would see it a lot because I'm in a really high kind of stress, and Lisa will have witnessed what happened this week.
I couldn't cope. I couldn't cope.
If I didn't laugh at the things that happened this week, like no joke, having to go on live television in front of possibly 400,000 or 500,000 people. So not only had I to bring it back into the room, but I had it was the laugh or cry moment. So it's important we reveal a little bit of who we are. It'll bring our team together, you know, and I'll tell you a good one about, and we'll probably finish up, I know.
No.
So I got a job based on humor, right? well, I'd like to think I had the skills as well, obviously. So I don't know if anyone has heard of Mary Portas. Have you heard of Mary Portas, Katrina?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
So I've had the privilege, terrifying as it was, of auditioning for a role with Mary. She was launching a brand new store concept in Oxford Street in London. And I was hitting nearly 30 at this time, okay? And I had worked, actually, that's how Lisa and I knew, we worked in supply chain. So I had, I suppose, a very, in a way, traditional, a very entrepreneurial spirit at home. But my parents would have been quite traditional. So the question was, you're leaving your job for what?
Sounds like my parents.
Sorry, for what now? And they always encouraged any kind of hobbies. Hobbies was one thing, a career.
While changing the lock on your bedroom door and...
I mean, wait, and I tell you, so like automatically I had there was a lot on the line for me, right? So I decided, Mary Portas put up this Facebook, I call it a challenge. Do you think you have what it takes was how this was delivered. And I thought, I also knew that I was in the middle of a transformation. I was on the way out of the job I was in. I wanted that platform. I wanted to follow my dream, which was styling and passion. But really it was about connecting with people. Long story short, flew over to London 6 times. Audition. 400 people went for the role. It was down to the last 12. I was in the room. Can you imagine being in a room? Now, there was a lot at stake. There was a lot at stake for everyone for different reasons. And for me, I had all this in the background. I was just after buying a house, leaving a really good career. I had it all on the line. So I had that extra pressure. I'm not saying it was above anyone else's, but I was in a room with 11 other people and I was getting their nervous energy all day. I was told I was being interviewed at about 11 a.m. At 4 p.m., I was brought into the room. 5 hours later. And Mary had the cheek, Mary Portas. Now, I was in front of Channel 4. I was in front of all the top execs. You know, you talk about C-suites. I was there with the who's who of the retail world. And she said to me, so why should I give you the job? Well, do you think you got what it takes? I wanted to go, are you for real? You left me inside that room for 5 hours. And I said, do you know what, Mary? We're just selling a few frocks. And she laughed and laughed and laughed. I got the job, by the way. I was
Congratulations.
for nearly killed me. And I learned more about 1 year working with Mary Portas, I'll tell you that. But what's the part of the story here? Humor is brilliant because it gets you when you least expect it. And if you do something to flip a situation, not only is it going to diffuse conflict, it's going to bring everyone on side, it's going to reduce the levels of anxiety, and it might even get you the job. So, you know, probably finish up with that.
It's your first time on TV as well, wasn't it?
It was my first time on TV. And you know what the funny thing about it was? I forgot the cameras that were there in that room because I was so angry. I was like, how could you leave me here for 5 hours? But, you know, there was huge lessons to be learned from that as well. And again, you know, I had 10 years of most of the people. I had flipped careers. These are all entering in it. And this comes back to the emotional intelligence. I just thought to myself, I can give out here. That's not going to get me the job. You know, the more than yourselves, you're trying to deliver a project. Yeah. But yeah, I learned a huge amount. And humor is the cornerstone of what Lisa and I have built in ThinkHackers. It is our community, you know, and we want to create a safe space for you, those unique voices that we are looking at today. And it's about getting your right message across. Taking yourself out of it, being self-aware, putting yourself in other people's shoes. Yes, we coach people individually, you know, we run group workshops, but no matter what we do, you and the person will always be the focus. You know, emotional intelligence is not a soft skill, it's a superpower if you become self-aware. And the other thing is you just have to tap into it a little bit more. So look, we want everyone to stay in good humour now, so we'll finish up. But we hope at the very least, right, you walk away a little bit more curious. And if you are curious, please DM us. We're on Instagram at ThinkHackers. We have a brand new website, which really, I have to say, Lisa has put a huge amount of work into it as well. Anything detailed, we've established I'm obviously not the detailed one. But
you have a podcast as well, so I think that's the one that we probably need to listen to too. So.
Yes, we did a podcast with Ladies of Measure. But look, we'd love to hear your feedback and get in touch. We want to thank Katrina. And look, have a great Christmas and thanks everyone for listening.
Have a brilliant time.
Thanks, ladies. Well, you know, I say it all the time, we have a nice mix of webinars. These are from the Ireland Chapter of the PMI, and they are to kind of do the continuous learning and the continuous improvement. And it's always been a mix of trying, like, the only word that's coming to my head right now is soft skills, which you just told me not to use. So there's your negative reinforcement right there as proof.
It is what it is. It is what it is. Hopefully we a little bit more focused. No, and I mean, it is
important, like, that there is a lot that we do. And actually, Norma, who is on the committee and works for Aspire Training, and she's a trainer, did a really great session a couple of weeks ago where she actually focused on the top skills for project managers. Had nothing to do with your ability to put a project plan together or your ability to.
And I never even said that. Like, there, you know, in the report that PMI did about, you know, the blind spots for project managers, when the project managers were asked what were the core competencies, what were the things they wanted to see, the top one by a long yard mile was communication.
Yeah, it is absolutely. And it is, like, she spoke about taking the difficult conversation. It was one of the things she was like, if you're not able to do that, you're probably in the wrong profession. So it's definitely something that that is of interest. And even, I just think, even for this hour, to have somebody that understands that it can be actually quite isolating as a project manager, because it actually, the buck does stop with you as a project manager, and it can be frustrating sometimes as well, because you're not meant to be doing it on your own. You're meant to be project managing it, but sometimes it does feel like you are on your own in this world. So I think we've all felt your pain of everything going wrong for you on the night that was in it. We could all on this webinar tell you a lot of horror stories about things that have gone wrong, despite all the prep that was put into it. So we feel your pain for sure. So
I'm still feeling it quite raw.
Yeah, exactly.
And all you see is 6 minutes next week if you could be bothered on RT. But yeah, look, all lessons, every day is a school day.
Every day is a school day, exactly. So thank you so much for speaking to us today. And it was nice. It was just nice to have the little bit of conversation as well. And guys, I have a slide at the end that will share the contacts, and I will ask you for those names and those books that you recommended, because it might be some interesting, personally, the kind of books I prefer to read as well. For everyone that's on the call, you just heard me say at the well, you didn't just hear me say, you heard me say it right at the very beginning. This was our last webinar in 2020. We have a series of webinars coming up in 2021 as well. To close out this year, we have 2 events happening. I just want to talk about that should say the 17th of December. So it's lovely to spot the typo right now, but never mind. We have I'm calling it a fireside chat with Joe Houghton, who's the Programme Director with the Masters in Project Management at UCD, and Jackie Fagan, who's the Vice President of the Ireland Chapter of PMI. And I'm calling it a fireside chat because there's absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to control Joe and Jackie when I get them together in the same virtual room. So I'll try and put some sense of organisation on it. The topic is project management as a life skill, and both of them so much experience with personal projects in their personal life, like writing books. And I think Jackie is still in the middle of construction or reconstruction of her home. So there's a lot to chat about, and I think it's a nice way to end the year. But it's not the only thing that we want to talk to you about. So before we sign off, the AGM is next week. Anyone that's an Ireland Chapter member will have received an email from it'll come from the PMI Ireland Chapter, but it's from no-reply@votenet. Please exercise your right to vote, and please also register and come to the AGM meeting, because your involvement is what makes the chapter work for you. So your voice and your input is really, really needed. And next year we're going to be looking for some more volunteers. So we've got some opportunities coming up, and we're going to run a meeting on the 20th of January to tell you a bit about those volunteer roles and give you an opportunity to ask us questions about them. And hopefully we'll have a good round of volunteers for 2020, and it will be a lot of engaging activities. So if you consider this engaging, hosting events, that's one of the volunteer opportunities that's coming up as well. And lastly, as always, you will have one PDU, and I'll take care of the registration of that for you. So that just leaves me to say, and we're going to sign off now. Thank you very much to Fiona and Lisa. Really appreciate it. It was a nice interactive session and a change from reading slides as we go through, which sometimes is needed because we have a lot of information heavy webinars.
The devils for getting people to pay attention. So thanks. No slides here.
Well, ladies, I shall leave the last word to you, and then we'll sign off for the day. So thank you very much.
And look, Katrina, thank you to everybody, and to you and to everybody for listening as well. And you know, if you take away anything from this, take away a curiosity about developing your own emotional intelligence. And if you want support, or if you are going through a tough situation, a conflict, you know, if you're finding it difficult to just meet somebody in the middle in a conversation, whatever, just reach out to us. We are a community first and foremost. You know, we have the services, and that coaching service is there and available because as Fiona always says, I need to feed the baby,
Need to
feed
feed
the
the babies,
babies,
Lisa.
big time. But at the same time, at the core and the heart of what we do as a community, so do reach out to us.
Absolutely.
And
So look, there are the links. Thank you very much. So we will sign off. And if you're not going to join us for any more webinars this year, and I'll say to Fiona and Lisa as well, to have a happy Christmas and a prosperous new year, because it's December, so we can say that now.
many happy returns.
And COVID-free 2021.
Absolutely,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Thank
Thanks.
you to everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.